to listen to the voices of people using social media, and what the people using social media are saying is that we need, and by the way, this is not an argument about abstinence versus harm reduction. It's absolutely not, because there's a place for both, you know, but there needs to be a support. If we are going to give someone opiate replacement therapy, we must support them with a care plan. You know, we must support them and say, if you're going to be on this for 6 months, what is the progress? What are we looking to sustain within that 6 months? I've actually got a friend of mine with me today who has been capped on methadone for 17 years, give or take, and almost didn't get to come here today because she's chained to a chemist. You know, I think that we need to work together, because again, I'm watching the divides on Twitter and on social medias, and it's very, very unhealthy, when reality is we're all trying to share the same message, and that's that we need to help Scotland to get better. We need to help support people to come off the drugs. We need to make services more available. You know, as we're sitting here, services are closing down in Glasgow. You know, the only reason organisations fight with one another is because they're fighting for funding. So of course we're going to criticise each other. If there's a small pocket of funding, everyone's going to fight for it, and with that fight will come criticism about what people are doing right or wrong. And what is happening is, while we are sitting here, there's people in Scotland dying. You know, as you highlighted this morning, for every 7 hours and 14 seconds that we delay, there's someone else dying. Postle Park is the community where I grew up, Postle Park in Swinburne. Since Monday there's been 3 drug-related deaths. That's not acceptable. Is the numbers 1,189 people? Is that the numbers that died in Scotland? Because I doubt it. I doubt it. I work in the field. You know, the amount of my prisoners that leave because they have such low tolerance and they're unsupported. When they leave prison, they're dying. You don't hear about that.
Thanks, Natalie. I think the point about prisoner support, the through care service, which has been brought to an end, I think that will probably come up this afternoon. Can I turn to Sharon, but welcome to Darren and who've joined us. I'll let you catch your breath, Darren, and I'll turn to Sharon next. So Natalie's given her perspective. You live in Dundee, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, get to this point, I'm somebody that has not long come through everything that Natalie's just described. I think that after I lost my partner to suicide, whilst he was reducing off a methadone prescription, unsupported for trauma that he'd suffered, and I witnessed the devastation it caused my family, and then realising that we're not isolated. There's probably about 4 or 5 kids in my daughter's class at school that's lost 1 or 2 parents before they reach first year of high school, and then obviously I got together with a few people and we decided that we would try and pick up where the services were faltering. They can only do so much. They can't reach out to communities the way we can. So there's as Natalie said, there's a place for everything that exists already. There's a place for. It's not cohesive. They don't work together. The funding is low on the ground. They have to vie for funding every single year. Services that are working, that are doing what they should do, are losing funding and then closing, like Natalie says. In Dundee, the situation is dire. Glasgow, I think, has got a bit more structure to the recovery community and what exists there. We've kind of been isolated in the work that we've done just because of distance and because of the situation. That's changing, I hope, but we're not recognised in our city at all as anybody that could give anything genuine to what the statutory services do. It's only quite recently that NHS decided that maybe we will welcome these people in to advocate and support people. That should not be the case. Whether we were an advocate, a family member, we should still be allowed through that door no matter what, to support a person that cannot vocalise what kind of support they're expecting. Obviously the lived experience, I believe, is a key to everything that's going on here, and there's many of us around the table that have got that. I think that unless we Oh, sorry, I'm getting a bit nervous. And unless we address the issues that have got us here to this point now, and come together and make a clear, structured plan of how to go forward to prevent these deaths, because every single one is preventable, then we're going to be sitting around the table again in another 10 years when another strategy is thrown out and people are talking. I've seen a lot of change in the last 3 years. I'm quite new to this. Like, you guys have been doing it for a lot longer than me. And I have seen a lot of changes, which makes me optimistic that these things can be addressed and done very quickly. But as Natalie says, time is of the essence. We're losing people by the minute, not by the day. We're creating a perfect storm. I see the kids that we support, the young people that we support now, that haven't even touched drugs or alcohol, that have had parents that are affected, they've lost parents, and the trauma they're suffering right now is going to continue, and they will then go into that lifestyle or worse, and there's no support for them. I've got a big issue about young people not getting the support. The off-site schools are full of kids with 2, 3 parents, grandparents that have all been addicts, and there's no proper support when they come out through care after care, or they're on and off in the off-site school. There's no support. They're put out into the community, left to fend for themselves, and then you wonder why in 10 years' time they're then chapping the door of an NHS service to be treated for addiction, suicide, whatever. It's it needs to be dealt with.
Thank you, Joanna, for speaking so powerfully. One of the worrying aspects of what's happening in Dundee is that for years we've been told that the profile of Scottish drug users is an ageing cohort, but in Dundee we're seeing younger people caught up in this cycle, which becomes then difficult to break. Four
young people under 24. 4 of them were 17 that died in the last 6 months in Dundee. Whether that'll come up in your statistics or not, I don't know. But that's fact. That is reality.
Dan, I'm going to come to you. I know you've got a lot to say about this, and today we want to hear people's lived experience, because we're having a parliamentary debate this afternoon, but I don't know any MSPs who openly say that they're drug users, former addicts, because I think we've touched on it, there's still a lot of stigma. And if an MSP stood up and said, oh, I'm in recovery,
well, what's fascinating is,
what's
fascinating, thank you by the way, sorry we're a wee bit late, we got trapped behind some tourists, security. Yes, so just a couple of things to pick up on what's previously been said before I start. I'm familiar with what Sharon does, I'm familiar with her organisation. One of the things I've witnessed, and one of the reasons why I threw my support behind her and her group, is because not only did she suffer the exclusion associated with addiction and the stigma and all the attendant challenges of that, but then when she began to move confidently into the recovery field as a community leader, she also suffered additional exclusion, because she, like many of the addicts that she advocates for and supports, she isn't up on all the studied formality of a recovery field which is dominated by middle class sensibilities, of charities, of politics, and all of the various professions associated with it. And what I mean by that is, when you come into the Parliament, you have a sense immediately of a certain expectation on you. You might become aware suddenly that you are underdressed. You might become aware suddenly that you are not speaking in a proper way. Now, no one actually, the Illuminati don't drag you into a room and say, this is what's expected of you in here. You just pick it up. You have a social antenna that's very intuitive to these things. Now, part of the problem with social inequality is that it's created this ravine through society where we don't mix enough in order to understand what the studied formality of certain communities is, and this is as true of GPs dealing with addicts as it is of recovered addicts trying to move into the recovery field. So often people will speak in a language that makes sense to them, they'll have a sense of priority that is formed by their experiences, and they will be met with tremendous resistance where there's a pre-established orthodoxy, a pre-established sensibility, and anything that jars with that is perceived as vulgar, and anything that jars with that is perceived as uneducated, or people don't see the bigger picture. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if everybody was beginning from a level playing field, but obviously, as we know, then that isn't the case. So often the power dynamics are such that people with the most expertise, the most experience from which to draw, to add to the debate, they will struggle to actually have their voice heard. I experienced this last week actually when I kind of formally entered the debate, making the mistake to do it on social media. And I could not believe the resistance with which I was met from GPs, particularly on this topic of methadone. Not to get diverted to talk about one specific drug, but around the methadone issue you find a lot of the issues at play here. You know, I mean, there's a lot of evidence around the overprescription of other drugs trying to deal with the heroin problem. Tramadol, benzos, tranquilizers in the 90s, then all of these drugs, once we realised that there was actually a problem, because who would have thought introducing drugs that reduce stress into our most stressed communities might lead to a high uptake of such drugs? Does it occur to some people that we've already tried this experiment with alcohol and gambling and chocolate, but let's flood our most stressed communities with these things that help people relax? So ultimately, when you talk about methadone, you're not criticising people who use it, right? You're talking about an orthodoxy that has sustained for the last 40 years, that has no metric to measure its own failure. Now, I'm not talking just about individual cases, I'm talking about now we have 1,187 people, we know it's more, right? I just lost a pal on Monday, right? And he's not part of the train spotting generation, and can we stop calling it the train spotting generation? It's not Irvine Welsh's fault that people are dying from drug deaths. The accountability is widespread, but there's as much responsibility to go around the various professional classes, managerial classes in politics, as there is the individual drug users themselves. Now, why were these drugs overprescribed in the 90s? It was to deal with heroin, right? So we understand that. Now, one of the issues I have around the lack of kind of a public health emergency declaration is that in 1996, 20 people in this country died of food poisoning, right? E. coli, and there was a big public inquiry about it, and it produced a damning report, and it criticised a butcher and public officials. Now see, in that, you find everything you need to know about the lopsided nature of accountability in this society. A butcher is held responsible as an individual, and council officials are held responsible collectively. You have to think about the distortion and the crazy incentives that might arise 40 years where the people who have the biggest influence over what happens are never held individually responsible and always have some protection from parliamentary privilege or some opaque legal personality. So it means that when you're going to work, you're not thinking, hang on, my arse might be on the line here today. You're thinking, actually, I exist in a society and a culture where it's cheaper and easier to prescribe these drugs, because the only people who are entitled to 12-step rehab programs are doctors with opiate problems. And that's an interesting thing, isn't it? So if you're a GP and you go and you say, I've been prescribing myself Valium, or I've been prescribing myself tranquilizers, do you know what they do? They send you to a 12-step rehab. Now, why did they send you to a 12-step rehab if you're a doctor, but they're closing rehabs for everyone else and saying 12-step rehab's not the way forward? The way forward is all of these other things that keep on producing more deaths. Now, the last thing that I'm going to say is, I hope it's the last thing I'm going to say, is when we think about addiction, right, we're all working off of some different terminology. So some people's idea or conception of addiction is formed through their own experience. Some people it's theoretical understanding. There's not one definition that beats all the other ones. But around the methadone issue, you'll find one of the most interesting logical fallacies that's present among people who are apparently educated, right? And that is this. So on one hand, the harm reductionist and the abstinence model says that the addict suffers from a physical and mental issue where they have a self-limiting belief that they require continued use of a substance in order to be happy, right? That they are unable, in the presence of this addiction, to assess or make rational choices in relation to their health, yeah? We all agree on that, roughly, as a conception of addiction that characterises the addict. In the same token, the GPs who accept that analysis and accept that definition will also cite the person who's on methadone, their desire to remain on methadone, a substance that's more dangerous than heroin, more addictive than heroin, harder to come off than heroin. I'm not surprised somebody addicted to methadone tells their doctor they want to stay on it. Now, how can that contradictory understanding of addiction even be allowed to occur? Because on one hand they're saying the person can't make rational choices as they're addicted, but then they're using them as a human shield to justify a continued methadone script for 10, 20, 30 years. And then we get told that we're stigmatising methadone users for criticising the methadone programme. We don't get told we're criticising school kids when we talk about education policy. So I don't understand why this is allowed to be used as a justification, really, for a section of the population that is not used to being scrutinised this heavily. Now, I'm not generalising all GPs. I know even the GPs out there who maybe don't have a firm grasp of addiction as something that's experienced are good GPs, but we have to remember this is a society where 30 years ago we thought it was alright for teachers to assault kids in class in front of other pupils to discipline them. Right? We thought that it was okay, 50, 80, 100 years ago to perform lobotomies on people. We thought it was okay to do all sorts of things that we now know is completely unethical, and we wonder how did people back then manage to behave in such a way without reproach, without accountability? We've got a generation of people walking around traumatised for getting belted in school, and a lot of them use drugs. Could it be that we are currently living in a moment where we are in such a moral and ethical blind spot that it's not going to reflect very well on any of us, least of all the political class that are using the issue as something of a political football currently, which is very vulgar to watch, and constant emphasis on these clean injecting rooms, which represents a tiny fraction of the actual problem. What we need is more residential rehabs. We need proper investment in that. We need a task force that is at least 50% representative of people with lived experience. I know a lot of people on the task force. I'm not saying that they're not bringing a lot of skills to the table, but can you think of any other area in life concerning the rights of human beings, concerning the safety of human beings, where a task force didn't include people who'd experienced the issue? Can you imagine that if we were trying to come up with a policy around gender equality, around racial equality, around people with disabilities? Why is this okay for addicts? The answer is, it's not okay for addicts, and it needs to be changed immediately. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darren. I've just noticed that you've not got any water there, so maybe someone can bring over some...
I'm sorry, I realised that was a bit aggressive, but actually, it's totally called for.
You're just warming up, that's fine. I'm delighted that in mid-flow there, Darren, we've been joined by the Minister for Public Health, Joe Fitzpatrick, because everything that we've talked about so far is a public health issue. So hopefully Joe will make some comments. But I was going to come to Matt McGivern from the Daily Record, because we've touched on the media a couple of times, and we're delighted that the Daily Record has taken a fairly responsible approach to this. I think we still see the drugs paraphernalia and the images, the stock images that are not so nice to see. But we'll talk about stigma, a bit about language and so on. But maybe Mark can say why the Daily Record is running this campaign and what you're going to do next.
Monica, thanks for arranging this today, and thanks for so many people coming up, especially people with lived experience. Because I couldn't agree anymore that there should be far greater representation of that. And everybody talks about such people having even better representation, and then the task force pops up and it's quite a dry body with very little of it, and I can't agree with that. Going back to the Daily Record, we didn't just jump onto this because we could see the way the wind was blowing with drug deaths. I've been writing about this for years, and I got a bit of something dawned on me when I was writing about blues in street drugs. These are the fake Valium pills that everybody got addicted to in the back of over-prescribing of Valium. All the problems that came with flooding Scotland with these drugs that made them feel a bit better. And then the gangsters found a way of producing these drugs by millions in Scotland, which makes it well nigh impossible to stop. They got extremely cheap, so you could get them for 50 pence, or if you were, more canny, a lot cheaper than that. We've now got a problem with everything, the whole hangover with heroin. We've got a taste for opiates. We've got a habit of injecting drugs. We've got a perfect storm that's resulted in all these drug deaths, which I would imagine will be even worse next year. So, as I say, it's not just something we've jumped on board with. It's the Daily Records represent the working class people in Scotland, the working class communities. They're the ones where the poverty lies. That's where all the drug problems are. And if we're speaking to people that read the Daily Record, then it's been accepted for a while. There's a responsibility to cover these stories. I accept it. There's a lot of argument about what stigmatising language is, stigmatising imagery might be, but in a newspaper, you just, if you are speaking to people, you're speaking to all your readers. We're not calling people junkies. We're being a lot more respectful than newspapers were before, and we've definitely evolved. You might disagree with some of the images that you use, but you have to put a paper out that isn't it's going to catch people's attention, and it's an argument for another day. The things that involved. It's not something we've been with it for a while. We won't be letting it go either. We've made a firm commitment to that, and we will be filling pages with stuff that results from the task force. And one thing I think I would like to say is that if you've got a task force that's supposedly going to be generating new approaches, anything that you start as new involves a bit of capital to get it up and running, and the numbers that we're talking about so far, I think Joe had talked about £20 million a year extra, but that number was produced before we get the recent figures, before everybody started really getting involved with this. That's money that I think would have been spent anyway. I'd like to see there being more specific cash for any ideas that the task force actually generates. If we're serious about this being a real national emergency, £20 million is such a small amount of money, and I think we should address that more. Anyway, but yeah, we'll be here to cover it, and hopefully I've spoken to quite a lot of people in the room already, and thanks for the contributions. And I hope to speak to more people. From the outset, I could understand the difficulty with this. There's so much mudslinging. What Darren says is absolutely true. There's a big danger when you talk about anything other than harm reduction that you get presented as stupid and not understanding it. But there is an over-representation of certain views in this, and the methadone is absolutely wrecked. We really need to look at whether it's people get too much methadone, too little methadone, or whatever. People should monitor better. As Sharon said, there should be a better programme to establish what they get with a methadone and are they ever going to get off it. It's terrible at that. So yeah, we'll keep on it. We're not experts. We've presented ourselves as a forum or a platform for people who have got genuine experience in this diverse field to come and we'll find a place for them, find space for them, and we'll continue to do that. So I look forward to what other people have got to say, and we'll stick with it. Thanks for coming.
Thanks very much, Mark, and for different people from different backgrounds who are not part of the professional community a chance to give their views in the paper. The Minister's joined us. I know you're an MSP in Dundee. Sharon sitting next to you is from Dundee, and one of the things that Sharon talked about earlier on is about the impact on young people in Dundee, and over the last few years we've talked a lot about an ageing cohort of drug users, but we're seeing other things happening, particularly in Dundee, and just the impacts of trauma in young people's lives, and that can lead them to substance misuse. We've touched on issues around accountability, because we know there's lots of money going into services, but actually where is the evaluation, and how can we have good practice in one part of the country but not in another part? We can't have a postcode lottery. Darren's point about an inquiry into E. coli, I know that butchers in Lanarkshire, but where is the big inquiry into this? So the task force meets next week. I know you announced it back in March, so maybe you can touch on that, please.
Yeah. I actually don't want to take too much time, because the reason that I've come along today is to listen to that lived experience, which I think is so important. I've been in post now for a bit over a year, and I have spent a lot of time making sure that I'm hearing that lived experience, and so right across the country, meeting some fantastic organisations and fantastic groups, and even when you think you go into a service and it's not a recovery service as such, but then sometimes someone will just make the point that about their personal lived experience, and there is a range of lived experience out there, and it is so important that we in government and across the parties, because I don't think this should be something where we're having a party political fight about. That's not to say that I don't appreciate when Monica puts pressure on, because that's a democracy, and you suggested there maybe you were a bit aggressive, you were passionate, and so don't stop doing that, because if people stop being passionate, then it means that we've stopped caring, and maybe if we cared a bit more 20 years ago, then we might have taken decisions in Scotland similar to we're taking in other parts of the world, and Portugal is the example that's lined up. I don't for a second think we could take the model from Portugal and transplant it to Scotland and expect it to work, but nonetheless there was a hugely brave decision taken in Portugal then. I'm sure it was not popular. It would have been really challenging for us to do that here in Scotland, so again, I'm not criticising the people who are in power for not doing that, because we're all responsible for that. I don't think any of the parties in Scotland 20 years ago were in a position to go there. But I think we've moved, and I thank the Daily Record for helping us move that agenda on, because I do think that the work that Daily Record's done has been instrumental in moving that. So that's important. The task force, a bit around the table about the task force having 50%, and I get that argument. I've tried to pull together the people who. Task force not necessarily about going out and doing the research, because that's there, and I can hear from people with lived experience about the problems in terms of some of the services and how they're not delivering for individuals. The folk I've tried to bring around the table are the folk that I expect to make the changes. But that said, we absolutely have to make sure that lived experience is central to that, and Katrina Matheson, Professor Matheson, has been clear that she wants to do that, and she's looking at how she can do that. There's a balance between having everybody around the table who can add something. That wouldn't be possible, because this is a much bigger problem than we imagine. The range of people with lived experience, it just isn't possible to get everybody there. We haven't even managed to get all the services that we would like around the table, so ambulance service, for instance. But there's a balance between size and getting everybody. But I hope that once the task force starts to work, that people will have confidence that lived experience is absolutely going to be central to everything that it does, and that's certainly one of the things that I'm very keen to make sure. And of course, the task force isn't the be-all and end-all. There's a number of other announcements that were made in the programme for government, which I hope people will welcome, because they've been influenced by the discussions that I've had and officials have had across Scotland, and with people working in the area, but also with people with lived experience. So one of the big outcomes from the Dundee Drugs Commission was about the need for dual diagnosis, and the challenge that people experience when they have a mental health issue and a substance use issue, and how the services just try to box people into one or other. So one of the things that maybe didn't get as much publicity as I think it should have done from the programme for government, and my statement last week, was that move to have dual diagnosis and to do that properly, and that's what people have been asking for. The other thing that I've heard moving around, and Dundee again is a prime example, the work that Dundee Drugs Commission is obviously specific to Dundee, but it's I think wider for the rest of Scotland. How we do, first of all, to take the point about methadone, everybody's different, and we need to give people the support that works for them, but there's clearly, while we have UK clinical guidelines, there's clearly variability about how that is interpreted across Scotland. So moving to a national pathway, I hope will help us make a difference there. That's kind of hopefully addressing some of the points, but my main point for being here is to continue to listen to what you've got to say, and thanks for coming into the Parliament and taking the time. I think if we work together, I know Monica's view that this is something that goes beyond party politics. That's my view, and I'm So that's the way that we'll take this forward. Hopefully that will be appreciated. Hopefully we'll
Then just try and get as many comments in from who as possible.
Thank you very much, Monica, and thanks for creating this forum to hear our voices today. Just on the point that the Minister was making with regards to the National Institute of Clinical Excellence guidelines that our NHS is guided by, those guidelines also state that 12-step recovery is evidence-based and that there are other pathways to recovery other than methadone, but we don't see our NHS delivering that. In fact, we only have one service where the NHS is involved in that, Lothian Edinburgh Abstinence Project, which is a fantastic project. Why the research around that project, why we don't have a leap in every area is beyond my understanding. So also on the point of the Dundee report, the like the Road to Recovery, when it first came out in 2009, the response from many of the services then was, well, we're doing recovery anyway. I've already heard responses around the Dundee report, well, that's in Dundee and that's not happening. And I can assure you it's happening all across the UK, not just in Scotland. The feelings that were highlighted in that report, it was almost apologetic. It has to go further. There has to be an amends process made to people in recovery and to people who are still suffering. There is a lack of accountability. The language of that report talks about a no-blame culture, and that is double-speak shorthand for no accountability. What I would like to just say is that the organisation that I work for has created two documents. Both of them are here today, they're presided. The first one, we have 3,600 members across the UK who identify themselves as people in recovery. The first document I want to draw your attention to is the UK Recovery Declaration of Rights. This has been signed up to by 120 organisations. If you know anything about this field, you will know that this field and the individuals in it continuously work in isolation, conflict and competition with each other. So for any sort of unity to be brought together is outstanding, is unprecedented. In fact, 120 organisations, 37 MPs, cross-party support, Plaid Cymru, Independent, the Green Party, the Unionists, Labour, SNP, and even the Tories. So please have a look at what this organisation is doing, and thousands of individuals. The second thing I want to draw your attention to is that I referred to as the Twitter poll. Now this is quite simply a Twitter poll, but it's also highly evidence-based. This is born out of experience. There's doctors, lawyers, individuals in recovery, practitioners contributed to this. This is the solution. These are some of the solutions to the public health crisis that we are now facing, and it is a public health crisis. We need to call it that. These people are the most demonised. Us people, not these people, we are the most demonised, marginalised group of people we currently have. In fact, I was speaking to Bishop Mark, the Bishop of Durham recently, and he reminded me, and I reminded him of the story in the Bible of the lepers. We are the modern day lepers. The Minister will know, Mr Fitzpatrick, that he has been invited to 3 events that we are hosting. As Natalie mentioned earlier, we held 2 gatherings, the first in George Square as a candlelit vigil, and the second is more a rally and a call to action. Over 1,600 people took part in those events. Hundreds signed up to be informed of what we're doing next, and what we are doing next, and the Minister will see in his emails if he checks them this morning, that he has been invited to our first conference, which will be on the 4th of October in Maryhill Central Halls. We are taking this into the communities where people are dying. We will have speakers from the University of West of Scotland, and Darren McGarvey has just agreed to speak as well at that. The second event, this is not going to be a conversation cafe. The first event, we will produce a report, a very concise, down-to-earth report, which will list the problems and the solutions as we see it as people in recovery and people who have suffered and whose families have suffered. We will then have another event on the 1st of November. We will launch that report, and we will ask the government to receive it, formally receive it. And then on the 6th of December in Springburn, the second event will be in Possil, and the third event will be in Springburn, where we will ask the local MPs to take part, and we will ask that those recommendations in that report, that you will come back to us on the 6th of December with some actions that the task force will implement that will be recommended from that report. We are not letting this go. We are like duds with bones. This is our communities, and we need action.
Would you let the minister
Just very briefly, I haven't seen your email, and I should have said the reason I wasn't able to come for the start of the meeting was because I was visiting through 2000 up in Coburn Street to see some of the work that they're doing and kind of another good organisation, so I haven't had a chance to look at any emails. Obviously we'll look at that and see how things can work. Your organisation is one of the organisations I haven't yet met with, so maybe we should try and do that and have that sit down, because I think all the voices, I'm trying to get around as many as possible, but it's not easy, because there's a lot which is good, but there's a lot of
Actually, just finally, can I just mention that the £20 million that you mentioned earlier that was put in, that was actually just the £20 million that was removed in 2015. So, there's not an extra £20 million, it's just the money that the government removed in 2015. So we would really like to see that. And history will judge us very harshly for how we're treating people with addiction.
Then quickly on that, because that was brought earlier, so there was the £20 million which was added, which we've talked about in the past, which was added in 2017. And then in this programme for government, there's an additional £20 million announced as well. And let's see. So sometimes it's not just about money; it's about the way things are working as well.
It's absolutely about money, but it's about funding the right services. If you're serious about this crisis, the solutions are there. They are there.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Lots of dates for the diary there, but we've all taken notes, and I think there's a real desire for accountability and action, and that's coming across quite strongly in the room.